Joining us today, Brian DeMint, the author of Bitcoin Evangelism, head of marketing at the Orange Pill app. Brian earned a bachelor's degree in psychology with an emphasis in human behavioral science. Grew up on Sovereign Way, of all places, in Riverside, California. Brian's last name, DeMint, means from the house to making money. Brian is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I just want to say, in the forward, it starts with conversations with our wives probably include the words rear naked choke more than they should. Brian, such a pleasure to have you on. May you give us a brief introduction on who you are and what led you into Bitcoin?
I've never been introed with the rear naked choke line from the book. That is a good one. I didn't write that line. That was from the forward. My friend Eric that wrote that line. And Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guys we just have a weird lingo. A lot of it sounds almost slightly erotic, but at the same time, you're rolling around with people. So I get it why people have misrepresentations of what we do. I think it's like the most manly thing in the world, but maybe some people disagree. Anyways, yeah. So man, thank you so much for having me on the show. I've been doing the Bitcoin thing for 10 years in various capacities. Came to it as a skeptic, but through a series of events have gotten to this place where I wrote a book. The book led to just making connections with other people, to me getting to work with Orange Pill app as the head of marketing for that. And that's the cool thing about this industry is that you don't have to, and this is true for any industry, but Bitcoin's such a new industry. You don't have to ask for permission to do anything. I think that's the biggest thing that holds people back is they feel like that there's like a checkbox somewhere, or they need to like register somewhere in order to do something in life, to start a business or to start a podcast or whatever it is. You don't need permission. It's just show up, be present, try to provide value to other people. For 7 years of my Bitcoin journey, I was just the guy that was like reading books and listening to podcasts. And I said, you know what? I want to partake. I want to participate in this. I think that I've accrued enough knowledge that I can help distill things down and share with people. And so then starting to put myself out there, it led to opportunities like this, getting to come on your show, getting to work, like I said, with Orange Pill app. And, I just did Natalie Brunell's show the other day. And so just getting to make these new friends in the industry of people that I've always admired. It's just a matter of, is there a place for you in this industry? And the answer is probably overwhelmingly yes, because we need so many bodies in Bitcoin. And so I'm honored, probably very similar in the same way that you are. We feel honored and privileged to be able to be a part of this, but there's literally nothing special about this other than we just took the step forward to go ahead and do it. So that's why I'm sitting here today and get to chat with fine fellows like you, Sean.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. When I was talking about the Bitcoin news this morning, I'm like, I get to do the greatest thing. I get to talk about Bitcoin. I love reading. I love reading about Bitcoin, and then to be able to have a conversation with the Bitcoin author. But Brian, you're so right. There's no gatekeepers within Bitcoin at all. I think the only gatekeeper is if you're a bad actor. If you're a bad person, the Bitcoin community is just going to push you out and you're going to be a black sheep, a pariah. But if you jump into this with good intentions, I feel like the Bitcoin community is going to embrace you in so many ways. I'd like to steer this conversation. We've got about 50 more minutes remaining. I'd like to jump into the basics of Bitcoin for people, because you did such an amazing job laying it out in such a simple way. And then we'll jump into the Orange Pill app. And then the way that, I guess, traditional banks versus Bitcoin and what's going on. But I want to go way back, probably before all of this started. Brian, I know you grew up in a middle-class family, and I'm sorry that your dad passed away of a drug overdose. I believe that was about 20 years ago. The point is, you had a mother that wouldn't accept the bad circumstances in your life as an excuse for you or your brother to fail or be lazy. How's that shaped your life and then who you are? And did that directly or indirectly lead you into this sound money Bitcoin journey?
Yeah, I mean, my mom was essentially saying the proof of work message before that was the vernacular for it, and it was just like you get out what you put in. We're Bible believing family. My mom was for a long time. I was an atheist for a long time, but as an adult, I started becoming a Bible believing individual. And I think that why there's such an appeal, and I think there's kind of a resurgence in these types of things right now, is that people are realizing that taking steps, like doing difficult things, making, like, delaying gratification a little bit, waiting on, instead of eating the candy right now, eating something healthy, and like making good little decisions throughout our life, whether that's, moral decisions, dietary decisions, exercise decisions, interpersonal decisions. My mom was always really good about saying, you know what, in every moment of your life, you have decisions to make, and they always have, every one of them is a fork in the road. Now, she didn't want us to be handicapped by like this paralysis by analysis, like, oh my gosh, everything's a decision, and so I have this decision fatigue. But she just kind of kept saying this mantra of, it's not about making one really good decision or one really bad decision, but just this consistency in the things you do. Be consistent in life. You might not be the best person at any one given thing, but you're definitely not going to be the worst person at any given thing. And so just try to be consistent. Just show up and put in the work. And if you're consistent over a long enough arc, then you will probably be successful in whatever you do. That's certainly true for jiu-jitsu. I was just talking to one of my, I teach too. And there's this one of my students who's a white belt, but he's been training with me for 3 years. So he's about to be promoted to a blue belt. He doesn't know he's getting promoted anytime soon. We were just talking last night, and he goes, man, I was never a super athlete. I never was the guy that was picked first for basketball or baseball or anything like that. But I feel like I'm getting good at this, because he sees new guys coming in behind him. Even though he's a white belt, he's kind of at that upper level of white belt. And so there's newer guys than him that are bigger than him and stronger than him and more athletic, but he's getting on their back and rear naked choking them or whatever dirty move he's got in mind. Right. And so he said, and so that's what I told him. I said, it's because you've been showing up. Like, jiu-jitsu that's why there's so much appeal with jiu-jitsu these days, and martial arts in general, whether it's kickboxing. Martial arts, you can get good at them, not by being an athlete, but by just showing up and learning the technique until it's dialed into your DNA. You can do that with that. My reaction time might not be fast enough for baseball, or I might not be big enough and strong enough to be a lineman in football or something like that, because there's this like physical barrier for it. But things like martial arts, you can always be the best version of what you can present to the world just by being consistent over a long enough arc. And that's the same exact thing with Bitcoin. I've been buying Bitcoin, investing in Bitcoin. I lost most of it in a boating accident, so don't come after me. But I've been doing it since 2014, and there's times when you feel like an absolute genius, and there's times when you feel like an absolute idiot. But again, things are never as good as you think you're never as smart as you think you are. You're never as dumb as you think you are in the bad moments. It's somewhere in between, but just continuing to make good gradual decisions is something that I still live by today. And it's something that it was instilled in me at a very young age by my mom and somebody that said, you know what, like, yeah, you're not I wasn't the top person in my class, but I was like one of the top 10 in my class. And so she goes, that's pretty dang good. If you can constantly be in the top echelon of whatever you do, you don't have to be the number one person, but you can be relevant, and you can provide value for other people by showing up, and they know they can count on you. So there's so much fruit that's come from that. And I owe a lot to those values that she instilled in me at a very young age, especially at a time in my life that was a little chaotic. Things could have gone one way or the other, and she nudged me in a good direction.
Yeah. Big shout out and massive respect to your mum. Real quick question: are you familiar with the word Kaizen?
No, I've heard it before. I don't know what it is.
I believe it's either Japanese or Chinese. I believe it's Japanese, and it means continuous improvement. So it's exactly what you're describing there in a nutshell. Brian, you wrote this amazing quote in your book. You said, everyone has a shared purpose, and that is to glorify God. And one of the ways we do that is through our passions in our work. For me, helping people understand macrofinance, and more specifically Bitcoin, seems to fit my destiny calling, or whatever you want to call it. We can jump into the banks versus Bitcoin, but for anyone that's watching this that believes Bitcoin is still this magic internet money and it's a get rich quick scheme, how would you break it down to its simplest way? The Bitcoin lingo is how would you orange pill someone, but even more basic than that, how would you describe that it's not a Ponzi scheme, that it is revolutionary technology?
Yeah, I mean, I always try to tailor what I'm saying. That's like why the book has these different chapters, and it's meant to present to somebody. Here's like the different types of people you're talk to, or here's the different kind of tenets of Bitcoin that are going to appeal to different people. Hopefully, everybody understands all of these tenets at some point. But if I'm talking to a gold bug, I'm going to primarily talk about scarcity. If I'm talking to a freedom fighter, I'm going to talk about censorship resistance. Or if I'm talking to, like my mom who just wants to preserve her value, then I'm going to talk about immutability and things like that. Where hey, this thing can't be changed and messed with over time. Now, I think the thing that appeals to most people, the thing that's most front and center right now since COVID is money printing. Like that's the one, the scarcity angle is the easiest one to take because everybody sees that things are costing more. There's this kind of public awareness that excess capital in the system is the reason why this is happening. And so it's pretty low hanging fruit to just say that, look at Bitcoin is programmed to have only 21 million ever. Tell me right now. I had a friend of mine from high school. She apparently, I didn't know she was reading my book. She DM'd me the other day and she said, can you just I just bought your book. I haven't finished it yet. I just started, but can you just break it down to me in a nutshell so I kind of have a hint of what's going on? Like why does this matter? And I said, tell me how much of the US dollar is in circulation right now? She goes, I have no idea. I said, I can tell you right now, there's 21 million Bitcoin. I just left it at that. She'll find out that it's not 221 million. Yeah, sometimes you got to simplify it.
Yeah.
There's only 21 million Bitcoin. I can tell you with mathematic certainty how much there is right now. You would never play a game of Monopoly if you didn't know how much money was in the game. Right? It's actually against the rules of Monopoly to hide your money under the table. We've all played with somebody that tries to hide the money under the table or they put it in their pocket. It's against the rules because no child is going to play a game of Monopoly unless they understand how much money is in circulation, because that's the only way you can play a fair game of Monopoly. That's a 5-year-old won't play a game of Monopoly where you hide your money. They won't do that. And yet for some reason, we'll base our entire system of who's poor, who's rich, who's sick, who dies, all those things. We'll base that on a system that a 5-year-old wouldn't participate in if they had the choice to do it. So I think to most people, it's like that's a very visceral thing. And it's a very prima facie type of thing. You don't have to roll out the M2 money supply and help somebody understand like this is M2 money supply is kind of what we think is how much currency is in the circulation, but we really don't know. You can go down that rabbit hole, but just making broad statements about, we don't really know how much is money's in circulation. That's a problem. And you don't even know the rules of the game you're playing. With Bitcoin, you know the rules. It's on its face. It's a much better system.
Cool. And then what if someone came back and said, okay, there's Bitcoin, but I hear about Ethereum, XRP, Cardano. People just make up more cryptocurrency. So why can't we just use one of those and don't they take away the value of Bitcoin? Because maybe there's only 21 million Bitcoin ever, but there's a godzillion amounts of crypto in general. What's the counter argument to that?
Yeah. The way I would describe it is it's like language. The network effect of Bitcoin is part of what makes it so valuable. Ethereum doesn't dilute the supply of Bitcoin. XRP doesn't dilute the supply of Bitcoin. They are different things, just like French is different than English. With language, there's value that comes with understanding English. I'm able to interact on a familial level, a relationship level, a romantic level, a business level with people all over the world because we have a shared language. I can connect with those people. Bitcoin it's a language. So anybody that speaks the Bitcoin protocol, you can interact with, you can do business with, you can make a friendship with, you can buy coffee for them, whatever it happens to be, you can interact with those people. I can't send Bitcoin. You try it. It doesn't work. Like you can try to send Bitcoin to an Ethereum address that they don't communicate. Those languages don't speak to one another. And so the network effect of Ethereum, it has its own network effect, just like French has its own network effect. Like if you speak French, there's a certain pocket of people you can interact with. And so it really comes down to network effects. But I would never say that English is less valuable because French exists as well. It doesn't dilute the value of English because of that. And then one of the things that Knut Svanholm shared this with me, and I thought it was the most brilliant example ever. I think it's better even than the language example. He talks about chess. The game of chess is there's universal rules for chess. You and I, Sean, we could create our own version of chess right now. If you're over at my house, I could say, you know what? The king, he can move just like the queen. He can go anywhere on the board. So you essentially have two really powerful pieces. And me and Sean, we like to play that way because it's more fast paced. It creates new dynamics. It's just fun for us. Well, if we go to like the park where all the old homies are sitting there playing chess and the guys that are just like chess hustlers, if we go start to do that, they're going to laugh at us. They might even like try to punch us in the face. Like they will get offended at the thought of that we changed the rules of chess. Yes, we changed the rules of our version of it, but we had no impact on the original version of chess. Chess exists because there's a body of people that obey those rules. And it doesn't matter how many versions of chess you create, the core of chess will always ring true. That will always exist, no matter if you have 1,000 other versions. And even if those other versions are popular, those versions can be popular, but it does not dilute or change the original version.
Awesome. No, what a great way to explain it. So carrying on with this, now there's that debate against what is sound money, what is fiat money, and then how do the banks come in? A couple of things out of your book here is Bitcoin was created from first principles and has been intentionally designed to have the qualities or the properties of sound money. There's 8, and then you've made up a 9th one. So I'll just read those out. 1 is durability, 2, portability, 3, divisibility, 4, fungibility, 5, scarcity. Number 6, it needs to be a store of value. 7, it needs to be accepted or acceptability. 8 is a unit of account. And then the one that you've just made up there is number 9, being digital. Then you went on to say a quote by Jack Dorsey, the internet is going to have a native currency. So let's not wait for it to happen. Let's help it happen. And then further on, you go to say our banking system is immoral and designed to take wealth away from its citizens. So I know I just said a lot there, but gold has traditionally been used as sound money. We used to be on a gold standard and we've moved away from that. And now we've got this stuff called fiat. Can you explain in a digital age why something like Bitcoin is potentially better than gold and why Bitcoin and gold are 100% better than fiat? And then we'll dive into the banking system.
Yeah. And I never liked dunking on gold because I like gold. It's not like I dislike gold. I think there's a place for it in the portfolio. I know Bitcoiners that disagree with that. But to me, I like gold because of the properties that it holds. But what I will say about gold, and I think that a lot of gold bug people that I know that are trying to be forward thinking, they're like, okay, I like gold, but I also like this blockchain stuff. So why don't they just make a gold backed blockchain coin or crypto coin? And it's like, I know I see the logical connection, but there will always be a separation between the physical item and the digital representation of it, unless in Bitcoin's case, the physical manifestation of it, i.e. energy production, like when you mine, you're using physical energy. That physical energy is what creates the coins in the first place. That's the only way that we've discovered thus far to tie cryptocurrency to the physical world is through this proof of work mining system. So I think for gold bugs, it should really appeal to you, this Bitcoin thing, because some gold bugs say, I don't like the fact that these things are completely digital. I can't touch it. Well, yeah, I get that. I understand the problem with it. I like holding a gold coin too. I like holding $100 bill even, and I don't even really respect fiat, but there's just something about touching something that makes it feel like it's valuable. Yeah. But there's all sorts of things that you can't touch that have tremendous value. Mathematics has incredible value. Love has incredible value. Compassion has incredible value. Those things are metaphysical, and yet they're very, very valuable. Bitcoin money can be digital, can be metaphysical. But the cool thing is, like I said, there is a physical component to its creation. So it is unlike, Ethereum, where there's the Ethereum virtual machine. Vitalik Buterin said this time and time again, is that everything about Ethereum is digital. And that might be a strength for people. But for people that like a tether to the physical reality, guess what? Bitcoin does that. It has a tether to physical reality through the mining process of creating new Bitcoin. Now, why gold and Bitcoin are both better than fiat is because it takes effort to produce them. You have to go dig for gold, and you have to expend resources in order to get gold. If I hold a pile of gold, I can be fairly confident that alchemists aren't going to create this out of nowhere, because it's been tried and tried and tried through the centuries, and nobody's found a way to just print more gold into existence or to stir in a pot and create more gold. I know the only way is if somebody's going to put work and labor into doing that. And somebody would only do that if there was a market demand for that. And so the market demand, I'm fine with the goods and the money that I hold having this supply and demand economic of its production. Same thing with Bitcoin. In order to produce more Bitcoin, you have to lend your computing power to it. It used to be really cheap to do that. Now it's so difficult to mine Bitcoin that you actually have to expend pretty significant resources in order to create new Bitcoin. So, sorry, all my examples are like jiu-jitsu examples today, but as a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt, I would be personally offended if somebody walked up to me, they're like, yeah, I've been training for 6 weeks and I got my black belt too. I was like, dude, you did not put in the work. I don't care how good you are. And this is true. Even if somebody can come into the gym and beat me up on day one because they're just God's gift to, the species, and they're just an incredible fighter, they're not a black belt on day one. There's something that they have to go through, this process of refinement that qualifies them as a black belt. And so we see this in all sorts of areas of life, that things have more value when you put work into them. We understand that this guy is legitimate. This guy is committed to our art because he's put in 10 years of training in order to get to this level. He didn't just show up and take it for granted. And that's the same thing with Bitcoin. It has value because we know that people can't just flip a switch and put new Bitcoin into creation. Somebody had to do something in order to get it. And so we as a species value work and productivity because we know that somebody must really want it in order to do that. And so it comes back to this supply and demand, market demand kind of loop that satisfies everybody that's in that economy.
Yeah, cool. I guess one of the things that people could come back with is, isn't Bitcoin mining then a waste of energy? Like, if there's all these computers doing this thing, just solving a math problem, what's the incentive? Obviously, people get paid to be able to do that, but why should we be using the world's resources to mine this digital currency?
Yeah, I mean, I personally think it's just a good use of energy, because the opposite, which there's a good argument that our current financial system actually uses way more energy than Bitcoin does when you consider all of it, everything that it takes to run all of the banks and the air conditioning and the ATMs and all those things that they probably draw, because the banking system's so big, 100 times more energy to run our current financial system. My argument would be we're actually expending more energy on the current banking system that's a systemically immoral system. And so even if Bitcoin cost more energy, I think it's a worthwhile investment in humanity to do that, because it's a much fairer system. It's actually a moral system. The system we have right now insidiously robs from citizens that don't understand the rules of the game. If my brother was being robbed at knife point right in front of me, it'd be my moral obligation to do something about it. Maybe not to be, macho and go try to confront this guy, but to at least call the police, to shout at the guy, to do something. It's my moral obligation, I think, in order to help somebody when they're being robbed. That's very clear, because you'd be a bad guy to not help your brother getting robbed at knife point. But for whatever reason, when my brother is getting robbed slowly every year because of the way the financial system works, for some reason that's acceptable. It's not. It's a perfectly good use of energy to balance that system. Beyond that, there's actually, I mine Bitcoin I use SAS mining to mine my Bitcoin. They're a hosted mining service. they use 100% renewable energy. There's a whole section of my book called Green Bitcoin where we go into the renewable energy side of Bitcoin. And yes, it expends a lot of energy, but it incentivizes green renewable energy. So Bitcoiners actually have, you hear in the news all the time that Bitcoiners are kind of like defending these attacks about being bad for the environment and bad for global warming and all these kinds of things. Bitcoiners, if we understand how our system works, if we understand how the renewable energy process works with Bitcoin mining, we actually have the higher ground on the climate argument, on the we're providing more renewable energy, less fossil fuels. I cite a study in the book that it's something like 60% of Bitcoin mining, as high as 60%. There's people that think it's lower, it's like 30 or 40%. But of Bitcoin mining uses renewable energy. All other industries use about 20% renewable energy or less. And so Bitcoin uses at least 50% more, if not 2 times more renewable energy than all other industries that are out there. So Bitcoin is pushing the envelope, pressing the envelope for renewable energy. So not only is even if we were burning dirty coal or dung or whatever to produce the Bitcoin and to mine it, I actually think it would be a worthwhile thing because it's a better moral system. But there's actually environmental benefits because of Bitcoin. There's actually technological benefits of improving renewable energy sources because of Bitcoin. So it really wins on all fronts. And this is new. We're in like the first few innings of this whole thing. Bitcoin's already winning that race. Guess what happens 3 years from now? Bitcoin's only going to get better in the ways that it's beating out other industries. So Bitcoin's at its worst version of its, like, and anybody that's coming to Bitcoin right now, this is the worst version of Bitcoin in every category. And it's still better than all the other alternatives. It's just going to continue the gap's going to widen between Bitcoin and alternative systems as we go forward.
Yeah, awesome. I think that energy debate, when you spend a lot of time within the Bitcoin ecosystem, you understand that argument very well. For everyone watching this that is new, I just really recommend reading that section in the book. Is probably the easiest way because it is very nuanced. And especially when we have corporations like Greenpeace being funded to come out with FUD campaigns with Bitcoin energy mining and stuff, it is hard to know what the truth is. So just spend, I don't know, even 2 to 4 hours to be able to find out why it uses so much energy, but also how it is helping sustainable energy or renewable energy to become more sustainable over time. One thing that really hit really hard in your book here, and it's sort of why Bitcoin for me is better than the banks, is it took us 200 years to print the first $1 trillion and then 8 years for the second trillion. And then 80% of dollars have been printed in the last 2 years. We're sitting over $10 trillion there, which is insane. How's Bitcoin fixing that problem there directly against fiat?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I think, and so sorry, I'm kind of extrapolating this toward the CBDCs and all that kind of stuff. I think Bitcoin is making CBDCs better than they would have been otherwise. As Bitcoin achieves more adoption and as more people take Bitcoin more seriously, the establishment is going to be they're going to be in competition with Bitcoin, and so it's going to make things less atrocious because they can print their currency into hyperinflation. I'm not just talking about the US dollar. I'm talking about every sovereign nation around the world that prints their own money. They can print their currency into oblivion, or and they might get away with that if there was no other alternative. But when people have this borderless alternative that they can pull up on their smartphone, then all of a sudden these governments are forced. There's kind of this check and balance effect that happens. And so I think that it's possible that with the U.S. dollar we've kind of achieved this escape velocity though because of COVID, because maybe the powers that be have decided that the only way out of this is just to print more money. Then that might be the case. I think there are countries around the world that aren't to that point yet, and they will be able to maybe Bitcoin will help fix their fiat currencies. But with the US dollar in particular, I think that the Federal Reserve, the government, the people that like to spend big, I think that they're going to try and get rid of our debt by making it inconsequential. $30 trillion in debt here in the United States is a massive, massive number. We've never seen anything like this in the United States before. But if you make $1 trillion, not a very significant amount of money, which plenty of currencies have done that. We always talk about Weimar Germany or Zimbabwe. The biggest inflation in history was the Hungarian hyperinflation after World War II. There was, I think it was quintillion notes, at least quadrillion notes. And so, I mean, trillions didn't even register on their radar. Like hyperinflation can do really, really crazy things to the denominations of your money. So I think that in the United States in particular, I think they've already made the decision that there's one way out, and we get to keep spending big, and we get to get away with we get to pay our debt back. But the buying power with what we pay people back with is going to be completely ruined. But we're still going to pay all of our debts, and then that's going to enable us to keep borrowing and keep this system going for a period of time. But as we've seen in history, when you have a sister currency in the economy, people will be able to flee over to that. So there will be portions of our population in all countries that will flee to Bitcoin. And so there will be safe haven for people that decide to make that jump. And I think that will become more alluring as time goes on, because think about it. If you and all your cousins have jumped to the lifeboat, but Auntie May is still on the boat that's sinking, eventually she's going to see that you guys are safe. And this crazy thing that you thought, Bitcoin that you've been talking about for years, all of a sudden it's going to make a whole lot of sense. So I think that people will be safe because of Bitcoin. The governments will do what governments have always done throughout history, and they will try to wipe away their debt via hyperinflation, and they'll do it with a smile on their face.
They're happy as. We'll see how happy Jerome Powers tomorrow with the next FOMC meeting. Say a young family growing up, they've got, I don't know, let's pick a number, $5,000 in savings. Their kids maybe 11 and 14. They're going to be going to college. They're going through high school. So like high school is what we call sort of like secondary school here, and then they go to college or university afterwards. These things can cost a lot of money, and what they're hearing about Bitcoin is they still think, again, back to the magic internet money, it's a Ponzi scheme. Do you think it's safer for them? Like, whereabouts are we with Bitcoin? Is it safer for them just to hold on to the cash, keep saving so that they can pay for their kids to go through college, do all their expenses? Or should they take an allocation of that $5,000 they have at the moment, put it into Bitcoin to hedge their bets? Or should they just concentrate on what they need to get their kids through the schooling and stuff, and then think about Bitcoin, say, in another 5-10 years' time?
I think it's a really good question. I think that's a position that I know a lot of people that I've talked to are like, that $5,000 number seems to be something that's like in people's heads. Cause I've had people consistently say, I've got $5,000. So I don't know if you've had those same conversations, but it seems like that's kind of, that's a real number that people kind of throw around. My first bit of advice would be like, just don't send your kids to college, like save that money and have them learn some stuff on YouTube or something. I don't know. But seriously, I think that it's a real consideration as far as, the investment in education here in the United States. My kids are homeschooled. I think that we may do the college thing. We're going to, make sure that we have that provided for our kids if the career they want to go into is doing the college thing. And I know that's not really the question you're asking, but I do think that those lifestyle things are a real, some of the status quo things that we're thinking, I need to save for this, I need to save for that. That might be an area of big savings. The problem is, I think a lot of parents, they scratch and claw to get their kids into college, and then the parents take out debt, or the parents pay their last penny in order to get their kid into college, but they still don't have enough. So then their kid has to take on some debt. And it's like they're scratching and clawing just to put their kid in a position that is like kind of a bad position to come out of college and make $30,000 a year and have $100,000 a year or $70,000 a year in debt. So even just reconsidering those milieus, I think, is a really good thing to think about. But when it comes to the investment side of it, you don't need to take $5,000 and dump it into Bitcoin. I think the best strategy, and this might be something that you would agree with, is just dollar cost averaging. I think most sensible Bitcoiners that I know, they talk about dollar cost averaging. If it's $10 a week, take an amount that you will not notice. Right now, I forget what it is that $10 can buy you. It's like 20 something thousand, probably 40,000 sats or something like that. Maybe 30,000 sats. That sounds about right, because if the price is around $30,000.
Yeah, $10 will buy you about 33,000 sats or something. I think.
So I believe that sats are going to reach parity with the penny. I think in the not too distant future. So if every time you set aside $10 and we're making 33,000 cents on that $10 in terms of buying power appreciation, you would feel really good about that. And you would have stayed liquid in your cash. You have cash needs. Your bills are often in cash. If you haven't gone entirely on a Bitcoin standard, you're not ready yet to pay for your mortgage and your food and all these things in Bitcoin. I'd say those are things that you could learn to do over time. I buy my meat in Bitcoin. We pay for marketing stuff in Bitcoin. I do business expenses in Bitcoin, but I don't pay my mortgage yet in Bitcoin. So I would say that for that person, just tuck little bits of Bitcoin away. It will appreciate. I firmly believe it will appreciate orders of magnitude more than you expect it to. And so most people say, well, if $10 is going to appreciate a lot, then surely I should do $20 because then I'll be twice as rich. But you need to balance your risk and you need to stay liquid. There's a brilliant saying about staying solvent longer. Basically, how does the saying go? It goes, the market can remain irrational longer than you can remain solvent. The market can be crazy for unexpected periods of time. Like right now in the United States, we printed, like you said, we printed 80% of all the dollars ever. Should we not be seeing hyperinflation right now and the complete destruction of the dollar? No, it's not happening yet. It feels like it should. The market can remain irrational for these really long periods of time. So I need to make sure that I can stay solvent through those storms. If I dump too much of my fiat into Bitcoin, it could create problems. And it might, and unfortunately, a lot of people have done that, people that don't have high conviction of Bitcoin yet. And then they're forced to sell their Bitcoin at a loss, perhaps. And then they don't return to Bitcoin, or perhaps they waste years not dollar cost averaging because they feel like they got burned by Bitcoin because they jumped in too hot and heavy from the beginning. So start small. If you want, they can increase that over time, but invest an amount monthly or weekly that you will not miss. That's super easy to do, and you can set it up automatically on Swan or Coinbase, wherever you want to buy it through. And you're gonna be proud of yourself a year from now, because every $10 that you put in, you now have $30 of buying power, and you'll be enough of a believer in a couple of years to say, okay, I'm going to do this for the long haul. Now I can bear waiting 10 years, 15 years to start spending these sats until my buying power appreciates. The first time I bought Bitcoin, I bought a Bitcoin for $250. It would buy my family's groceries for the week. Now that $250, the buying power of that will now buy my family a car. So I don't think of in Bitcoin necessarily of the dollar value. I think of what it can buy me. I think that in short order, it's going to buy my family a house. I think in short order after that, it's going to buy us an apartment complex that we can cash flow a business. So I think that people need to think more in terms of that. How can I make sure that this thing I'm putting my fiat into can buy me more stuff down the road? If that's how we adjust our mindset, then I think it goes a long, long way.
Yep. I think that's probably the best point that you made as well, is dollar cost averaging, which is just a set amount, but a set amount that you can afford to spend on coffee or you're not going to miss. And it's not going to worry you. It's not going to affect you. And then something I'd like to add on to that conversation, if you're doing $100 a week from the all-time high of Bitcoin around 69,000 to now, where it's less than half the price, you'd actually be in profit. So that's the power of doing DCA that way as well. And then, like you're saying, like it can be volatile. I think in the last 24 hours, maybe it's moved about $200 price movement, which is like nothing, like you wouldn't even blink at that. The other day is like $800 in 24 hours. And when you're in the space, you don't even blink. Like if it moves thousands of dollars a day, like it's just another day, because when you can zoom out, you see the trend is up and to the right over time. And anyone that's bought, if they hold on for 4 years, have been in profit over time as well. Switching gears, I want to dive into your role. It's so hard to steer away from the book. Really, everyone, I'd encourage you to read the book. It's absolutely amazing. I wrote like 13 pages of quotes down for this interview. Because we're on such a short time frame, I want to dive into the Orange Pill app, which I've signed up for. But can you dive into what it is, who created it, and what it's doing or what it's trying to do?
Yeah.
And what your role is, obviously.
All right. It was created by a pseudonymous founder named Matteo Pellegrini. No, I'm just playing. We know who he is. Actually a friend of mine. But no, this guy Matteo, he said, you know what? We Bitcoiners, like, one of the really important things about the future circular economy is that we need a social layer for Bitcoin. And there's plenty of ways to make online connections, and that's good. You can use Twitter, Instagram, online right now we're talking. That's great. Those are really, really important things for Bitcoin. But there's a in real life component of Bitcoin that really, outside of events, isn't taking place. Outside of events and meetups isn't taking place. And both of those things are really good. There's lots of people that are organizing meetups. There's lots of really cool events for Bitcoin. But there's not a lot of like one-on-one connections. Like, do I know my neighbor down the street that's into Bitcoin? It's really cool when you download the app and there's somebody that lives like in your community, and you're like, dude, I didn't know this guy. I would have never met this guy. He doesn't go to my grocery store. He goes to the other one. He doesn't go to my gym. He goes to the other one. But because I recognized we're both in the app, we're both into Bitcoin, we're buddies now. And we have this set of shared common values that it gives me one more connection. And guess what? Like, he's a plumber. I have a wellness business. I do the Bitcoin thing. Like, we have now these economic connections. I buy, like I said earlier, I buy my meat through a guy on Orange Pill app that accepts Bitcoin. And my wife has like a very high standard for the meat that we bring into our house. It's got to be super clean, organic, and all that kind of stuff. And pasture raised, grass fed, all those types of things. Well, guess what? I now have like an economic connection to food because of this app. So Orange Pill app is all about facilitating these in real life connections. We have an events tab, so you can find all those events I was talking about, whether it's a big one like Pacific Bitcoin, which, wink, wink, Orange Pill app's like the official app of Pacific Bitcoin, which is the coolest thing ever. Because we launched last Pacific Bitcoin. So we were literally just a booth. And I say I signed up as a user of Orange Pill app at that conference. Like, they had just launched. It was just Matteo and a couple advisors like BTC Sessions, Joe Hall, Knut Van Home. Those guys were already on board. So he had this really killer team of advisors, but it was really just kind of Matteo marketing it. And he has a really killer team of developers. And so it was like a small kind of tactile team. And they went from being a startup booth at the conference to the official app of the conference in 1 year. Really, really cool. But the other thing I'll say, going back to the last point you made about Bitcoiners not being too concerned if the price goes up or down. When I was at Pacific Bitcoin in whatever that was, November of last year, it was the week that the whole Sam Bankman-Fried, or maybe it was the week after Sam Bankman-Fried, all that stuff come out. So it was like literally the lowest part of the market. It was the absolute bottom of the market. And when you go to a Bitcoin conference, I was kind of expecting it to be like a somber mood or something like that. No, it was so refreshing to be around Bitcoiners in a bear market, because you're talking to guys that are building a Lightning wallet, or you're talking to the Orange Pill app guys that are building the social layer, because I wasn't a part of it at that time. So they were just telling me about it. Or you're hearing, from Swan about new things like their IRA that they were developing, and these different companies. Guys are fun, and you can crowdsource Bitcoin projects now and all that kind of stuff. All they were talking about was building. Like, as a Bitcoiner, my friends all the time, they're like, well, what's being built in Bitcoin? I don't know. I kind of read articles every once in a while. Go to a conference. There's tons of people building. in a bear market. And so if you want to be encouraged as a Bitcoiner or somebody that's like, I don't know, I feel like kind of alone in this journey, get on Orange Pill app and find another person in real life to connect with. It will reinforce your conviction, because sometimes when we feel like we're all alone, like, yeah, my internet friends are out there, but in my in-person life, I feel like a loner, like I'm the only guy at my office that believes this stuff. You kind of start to doubt yourself. But when you have somebody to converse with, that you can go out to coffee with, and you can, you know what, I've been afraid to ask this online. I didn't want to tweet this question out, but what do you think about this? Like, what about our altcoins? What's the deal with them? What's the deal with this? Like, you could ask those questions to somebody in person, and they're not going to shame you for asking questions, because you're face to face. People have a general courtesy about that they don't have when they're on Twitter, places like that. So Orange Pill app's super high signal. It's all legit Bitcoiners. There's a paywall. You pay a few bucks a month to be on it, but then you guarantee that there's no spam, there's no bots or anything like that. So it's a really cool tool for Bitcoiners to create this social portion of Bitcoin that needs to happen in order for hyper Bitcoinization to take place. Somebody's going to do this, whether it's Orange Pill app or somebody else. Somebody's going to build this infrastructure. And I think that we're kind of winning that race right now. But I'm fine as a Bitcoiner. I don't care if Twitter wants to do the same thing as we're doing. I don't think they're going to be able to do it effectively. There's too much noise on Twitter. But if they did, Godspeed, go ahead and do it. I want somebody to do this as a Bitcoiner. I'm just blessed and loving the fact that I get to help participate in it. It's really cool.
Yeah. Full disclosure, I want to actually talk about a really cool thing that happened with the Orange Pill app, but I have put a referral link below. I signed up myself. I paid my fee, lifetime membership as well. If you want to use the referral link, go ahead. If you don't want to use it, either way, I don't really care. But my journey with the Orange Pill app, there's this one gentleman in the Bitcoin space who I admire so much. And I've been trying for time, doesn't really make sense to me, but I would say maybe 3 to 5 months, I don't know, somewhere in that vicinity. It all either seems like it goes really fast or it takes a long time. But I've been trying to reach out to this gentleman through all these different avenues to be able to have a conversation like this, to be able to get him on. And he was there on the Orange Pill app, and I was like, I've tried everything else. Like, I'm probably pissing him off on Twitter. I've been trying to make up his email to see, if I can spam him and get on there. I send him a message on Twitter. Next day, no reply. The day after, I'd gotten a reply. Yes, sounds great. I look forward to it. When would you like to do it? And I'm like, wow, like that's all it takes. So the thing's already paid for itself for me, and that will be a live video, so everyone will get to experience that as well. But just to be able to use that to be able to have these conversations, I'm really starting to get very interested in Bitcoin mining. I had Rob Warren on from Riot the other day. That video will come out before this one has, so it's already there. Check that out as well. But I reached out to a guy, I believe he's in Sydney, that knows Bitcoin mining in Australia, where I'm living. And our electricity is so high, it's like 26.5 cents on average. So I can talk to him how he makes it profitable, because I know he's a Bitcoiner in Australia, and it gives me these ways to be able to reach these individuals. So mission complete, at least for me so far, it's been working really well. They're two amazing use cases that I have seen. With that, this is a question that I've asked quite a few guests, and basically, Satoshi, his last emails, they're on the 26th of August, 2011. He sent this email to Gavin Andreessen and Mike Hearn saying, I've moved on to other things and probably won't be around in the future. And then Satoshi Nakamoto, the founder or the founders behind Bitcoin, was never heard of again. There's these wallets that are assumed to be Satoshi Nakamoto's, which collectively hold over 1 million Bitcoin, or about 1 million Bitcoin, and they've been dormant since the day he disappeared. When Bitcoin reaches $1 million per coin, which in my opinion, not financial advice, is a matter of when, not if, but he's going to become the world's first trillionaire. most Bitcoiners, I'd say 95% of Bitcoiners believe these coins will never ever move, and this was Satoshi's gift. But what happens if those coins do move?
I mean, I hope they move because I think the price would move down. I think there would be kind of a freak out moment. And as a Bitcoiner, as somebody that stacks sats, like I love opportunities. I love Sam Bankman-Fried. One of the best things that ever happened to Bitcoin. One of the worst things to happen to Bitcoin. One of the best things to happen to Bitcoin
Yeah.
if you like to stack sats. I think that they would cause the price to move down, even if he just moved them from one wallet to the other. Like he wouldn't have to sell any of those Bitcoin for people to freak out, because that's always been one of those things is, oh my gosh, are those really essentially burned coins or not?
Yeah.
And so I think people kind of mentally in their mental model is like, okay, there's 21 million Bitcoin minus a million. So there's 20 million, that sort of thing. I think that would wear off really quickly. The market would come back, and it would end up being kind of a nothing burger. And ultimately it doesn't matter. Like it's a really, I think it's a really important thing to think through. I think it's a really good question, but I think that it's important for people that are concerned about that does not matter. It doesn't mean that we're going from 21 million coins to 22 million coins. It doesn't break any of the pre-existing rules. It could be that Satoshi just really wanted to save them until he got to become a trillionaire. I find it hard that any one person could have that kind of foresight that early on. Like that'd be a very difficult thing to do. Not only to have guessed that it would happen, but to have the ability to not sell those coins for any of like the short-term gains that you could have had, because he would be a billionaire many times over, having sold just a portion of his coins. It's hard to believe that somebody's still in control of those wallets. I believe that Satoshi seems, or group of people that are Satoshi, I think it actually might be an individual person. I think Satoshi was so principled that Satoshi probably destroyed his own access to those keys. He forgot the keys, he destroyed them, threw them away, whatever. I don't think that those keys exist anywhere. I think that there's probably a really good chance, because the whole point was he could have sought fame, right? Like when Bitcoin got to the point where, okay, it's pretty clear that like they're not going to arrest the Bitcoin people and throw them in prison, that Satoshi could have come out of the woodwork and said, look at me, I'm Satoshi. I made the coolest, technology of the last 100 years. He could have sought fame. He could have done those short-term things. And he's chosen not to do those things for the betterment of Bitcoin. I think he would have done what's in the best interest of Bitcoin, which would be to destroy those keys. That's my guess.
Yeah, awesome. I know in the book you speculated for a little bit of fun who you thought Satoshi Nakamoto was. I can't remember correctly, but was it Adam Back?
Yeah.
That's exactly who I think it was as well. So thanks very much, Adam. An amazing person, still an amazing person within the Bitcoin space as well. A couple of rapid fire tweets from yourself, July 15, 2023. You insinuated the CEO of one of the world's biggest banks is reading or has read your book. Who was that?
That I don't know. I still don't think I'm allowed to say his name or the name of the bank, dude. That was a good one though. I like that you said rapid fire. As soon as he gives me permission to, I will 100% tell everybody. But it's a big bank, and it's a bank everybody's heard about. And I mean, whatever. My face looks stupid, and I look like I'm a liar. So don't believe me. Like there's the CEO of private banking for one of the world's biggest banks is actually reading the Bitcoin Evangelism, because one of his friends that I met at the Bitcoin Miami conference bought my book, read the book, and said he needs to read this book. So he said, yeah, sure thing. Like I'm interested. I think it helped the BlackRock stuff. I think it's helping other bankers realize that or other people in that financial sector realize that they need to get with it. They need to at least understand what they're talking about.
100%. With BlackRock, is it good or bad for Bitcoin? We'll still go rapid fire. I know we're running out of time here.
I'm going to say good. As a pure Bitcoiner, I know it's not popular to say that. I think it's going to be a good thing.
Yep, I agree. I think it'll allow people to get educated and orange pill themselves further. Thoughts on Fed Now, which has just come live over in the States?
The greatest marketing for Bitcoin of all time.
What do you mean crypto is the first new asset class in over 300 years?
Yeah, I think it was bonds were the last new asset class in the 1600s. So yeah, crypto, Bitcoin, it's something new that we've never been able to invest in before. Completely decentralized type of investment.
Cool. One thing that I think about all the time is Bitcoin seems way too perfect. Like, it was engineered, it's got the 8 or 9 properties of sound money. It's been made to be the best form of money that's ever existed. Do you think maybe that there's an institution behind it, whether it's the Federal Reserve, the CIA, something with 3 letters that has put this out there because it just seems to be too good? Or was it just someone that was passionate about creating sound money?
I mean, I think it's clear. Like the cypherpunks claimed it, and I think it seems very in line with the cypherpunks ethos of fair systems of the ability for anonymity, privacy, all those kinds of things. To me, it seems the most clear that the cypherpunks created it. And who do the 3-letter agencies hire to do really cool hacker type things? They try to hire the cypherpunks. The cypherpunks are better than the 3-letter agencies because the ones that didn't sell out and go to those agencies stayed in the game and they built their own stuff. So yeah, it's a better version than the 3-letter agencies could have even come up with.
Yeah, so they didn't tap Adam back on the shoulder and say, hey, mate, can you design us some sound money? Brian, what message would you pass on to everyone that's gotten this far? They're obviously very deep thinkers. They're taking the time to learn about it. I urge them to check out your book, jump on the Orange Pill app, let everyone know where they can find you. But yeah, a parting message for everyone that's taken the time to sit here with us today.
I think that there's so much to be bullish with over Bitcoin. Things are being built, things are growing that you don't feel that. I've been through several bull market, bear market cycles. You never feel all the good stuff that happens in the bear market. And then when things explode in the bull market, you're like, wow, it looks like so much stuff was just built yesterday. It's like, no, it was built for the last 4 years. And it's just coming to fruition, or it was built a year ago and it was working, but now people care about it. The stuff that is going to melt your face off in this next phase of the market has already been built or is being built. Be bullish on Bitcoin. And for the doubters out there, Bitcoin's inevitable. Like, I don't know what to tell you. I know people like to temper their language and they like to sound responsible. I'm totally irresponsible when it comes to Bitcoin because to me, it's so clear that it's inevitable. There's a thing we call in economics called Gresham's law. It means that every time in human history, when governments have debased their money, which is what's happening now, and it's happened in every civilization in history, there's always a version of more scarce money, whether it's gold or seashells or whatever it is, that people will gravitate towards because it's more scarce. That's always the fix. Unfortunately, there's always a human element that controls that money, so that even that money becomes debased, and then the problem starts all over. Bitcoin's the first version. It's like, this is like where the line stops. Every time there was this trust problem, now Bitcoin has that scarcity thing that fixed previous money systems, but it doesn't have that thing of trust that perpetuates the cycle and starts it back over again. So just be bullish, be excited, do something in Bitcoin. Do what Sean's doing. Do what I'm doing. Don't ask for permission. Just go out and stink and do it. If you want to build a Bitcoin project or you don't know how to do it, but you have 1,000 sats, go on Geyser Fund and sponsor a project. Like, you can type in like, Bitcoiners in Africa. Oh, wow, they're having Bitcoin meetups in Africa. I'm going to sponsor that because I want people in the developing nations to learn more about Bitcoin. You can participate in that with very, very minimal resources. You can go start a podcast, write a book, whatever. Go on Orange Pill app. That's some of the lowest hanging fruit you can do, is just make friendships and connections in this space, because every connection you make now is going to be exponentially more valuable as this Bitcoin circular economy happens. If Bitcoin's the future, then you're going to be really glad you were at the ground floor of the Bitcoin economy, not just because your Bitcoin's going to go up in value, but because the people you're going to be around are going to be the wealthiest, most well thought out foresight people, the people with the best foresight. You're going to have surrounded yourself with really, really high quality people. That's if like government's just hands off and Bitcoin just flourishes in the good outcome. In the bad outcome, where CBDCs are totally tyrannical and awful, well, guess what? You've still developed connections economically, friendship wise, whatever, to be on that Bitcoin, you're going to be one of the only people, not one of the only people, you're going to be part of the only group of people in society that even has the ability to opt out of the atrocious CBDCs that are coming. So whether things are all sunshine and rainbows or whether things are kind of dark, you're in a much, much better place by owning some Bitcoin and having Bitcoin friends. It's so easy to do though, and you can prepare for that now, and have some fun while you're doing it. So that's my suggestion, at least.
Yeah, definitely. My parting message for everyone watching is just study Bitcoin and get off zero. If it's $5, if it's $10, please just get off zero. This book is a great place to start. There's some other amazing authors in the space. I've put your Twitter below, Brian, for everyone. So give this gentleman a follow, like the video. Thanks so much for spending the time today with us, everyone. Have a beautiful day. Be blessed. Peace.